My husband, Davis, had gotten his mistress pregnant. He brought up divorce with me. This time, I didn't make a scene with Davis. I simply added another 0 to the asset division clause in the divorce agreement. Davis didn't know yet that I was also pregnant. But the child wasn't his. I held the divorce agreement Davis had his people draft and read it for a full 10 minutes. He sat on the couch opposite me, his brows tightly furrowed, his tone impatient. Haven't you finished reading yet? Davis and I had been married for 3 years. Although we didn't have children, our shared interests weren't that easy to untangle. I looked again at the clause in the divorce agreement stating that the husband would pay the wife a one-time sum of $20 million, and then I smiled. I picked up the pen from the table, added a 0 after $20 million, and handed it to Davis. $20 million is too little. We've been married for 3 years, and you only secured your position as CEO of Vance thanks to my dad's support back then. How about $200 million? As soon as you agree to give me $200 million, we'll go straight to the county's office. This time, it was Davis's turn to be silent. I didn't rush him. Davis cheated on me in the 2nd year of our marriage. Because of his mistress, Ava, we had fought countless times. Recently, Ava got pregnant, and she deliberately arranged a live stream. During a mere 30-minute live stream, Ava threw up multiple times. That very night, Ava's affair with Davis was exposed and went viral on the trending topics. $200 million? Davis lit a cigarette, casually exhaled a smoke ring, and looked at me with a fake smile. Emma, you really are making an exorbitant demand. I had unilaterally loved Davis for many years. 3 years ago, when the Vance family was in turmoil, everyone else avoided them, but I seized the opportunity, begging Dad to let me marry Davis. With support and my help, Davis quickly stabilized the Vance fam. Situation and became the CEO of Vance. I thought he would see me in a new light then, and that we would live happily ever after, just like in movies and novels. But this world was never a fairy tale. I knew how much of a womanizer Davis used to be, but I never expected him to cheat after we got married. At first, I had hysterical arguments with him. Later, I gradually became numb to it. Come to think of it, this wasn't the first time Davis had brought up divorce. Not long after he got together with Ava, she came to our door to provoke me, and I slapped her twice. That day, Davis, enraged, rushed home and brought up divorce for the first time. In the subsequent times, every time we argued, he would use divorce as an argument. I had cried, I had made scenes, but this time I was truly tired. I didn't want to cry or make a fuss anymore. $200 million, not a cent less. I smiled at him. After all, if it weren't for me and Dad back then, it's hard to say if you'd be sitting securely as CEO of Vance right now. Vance had made quite a fortune these past 2 years. I can wait it out, but Ms. Ava probably can't, can she? I hear she's already 3 months pregnant. You wouldn't want your child to be an illegitimate child, would you? Since you yourself are an illegitimate child, you should deeply understand what it feels like to be one. My words hit a raw nerve with Davis. Davis's face was cold. A few minutes later, he called his lawyer to redraft the divorce agreement. The other clauses remained unchanged. Only the one-time payment of $20 million had been changed to $200 million. This time, I didn't hesitate. After signing my name with a flourish, I immediately followed Davis to the county's office to file divorce papers. After we finished the procedures and exited, Ava was already there, though I didn't know when she had arrived. She stood at the bottom of the steps in a loose white dress, looking exactly like a pure, flawless jasmine flower. Davi. Ava's eyes were solely on Davis. Seeing him emerge, she trotted a few steps towards the stairs. Careful. Davis, startled, quickly strode over, and steadied her. Ava playfully stuck out her tongue at him, then looked at me. Ms. Emma. I couldn't be bothered with her, so I stepped aside and walked down the other side. Emma. Davis called out to me. He said, since we're divorced, I hope you can move out of the mansion as soon as possible. Ava also gave me a sweet smile. That's right, Ms. Emma, we're waiting for you to move out so we can redecorate the mansion. After all, we have different tastes, and I don't really like the current decor in the mansion. Plus, we need to prepare the nursery. As spoke, she gently placed a hand on her abdomen, a brilliant smile on her face, her eyes filled with triumph. Oh, speaking of pregnancy. I pursed my lips. I almost forgot, I was pregnant too. But the child wasn't Davis's. I nodded at them. Don't worry, both of you. I'll move out as quickly as possible. Who had been widowed for years, remarried at the end of my first year of marriage, and this year my half-brother was already walking. They were a happy family of 3 now, so after the divorce, I had no intention of moving back and intruding on them. I had a lot of things, and it took a whole day even with 2 housekeepers helping me pack. Afterward, I hired a moving company and had everything transported to a house I had bought previously. Both and my stepmother called to persuade me to move back in with them, but I refused. It took me 3 or 4 days, but I finally finished unpacking and organizing everything in my new home. As I lay on the couch in my new home, eating fruit and scrolling through social media, I received a call from the hospital about an appointment. Half a month earlier, I had felt unwell and gone to the hospital for a checkup, unexpectedly discovering I was over 8 weeks pregnant. My first instinct was to terminate the pregnancy. The doctor, probably accustomed to such situations, simply gave me some precautions and scheduled a time for the procedure. Today was the scheduled day. I had completely forgotten about it. After hanging up, I sat alone on the couch, lost in thought for a long time. I was very clear that the child in my belly wasn't Davis's. As for the child's father, the thought of that man gave me a headache. I thought for a long time and finally decided to have the baby. Davis and I were divorced, and Dad had remarried and had a brother. I had no plans to remarry and would most likely live alone from now on. If I had a child with me, it might be a little better. With that thought, I suddenly developed a beautiful anticipation for the child in my belly. I switched to a private hospital that was excellent in every aspect, and then went for my prenatal checkup. After my prenatal checkup, I remembered I had left some books at Davis's mansion, so I drove over to pick them up. I had already made arrangements with Aunt at the mansion. She would resign after this month and come work for me, and I would give her a raise. Aunt had already gathered the books for me and brought them to the door. I just hadn't expected to coincidentally run into Davis and Ava. They had just returned from outside as well. The car stopped at the mansion entrance, and Ava got out with a grim expression, looking very angry. Davis called her name helplessly from behind, but she ignored him. I had already retrieved my things and confirmed Aunt's start date with me. Just as I was about to leave, both Ava and Davis saw me. "Ms. Emma?" Ava looked at me warily. "What are you doing here? You're already divorced from Davis. Even if there's something, you shouldn't be coming to see him anymore." "I'm not looking for him." I gestured with the bag in my hand. "I left some things behind earlier, so I came to pick them up." "What things?" Davis approached, frowning. He looked at me suspiciously. "You're not using this as an excuse to see me, are you?" "Mr. Davis, you can rest assured." I rolled my eyes at him. "Since we're divorced, I absolutely won't bother you again. I'm leaving now. I wish you and Ms. Ava a long and happy marriage, with many children and grandchildren." "Wait." Davis walked toward me, looking intently into my eyes, as if trying to discern if I was lying. "Emma, between the two of us, you were the one who was actively pursuing and practically throwing yourself at me from the start. You were never the type I liked." I couldn't resist asking, "If I wasn't your type, then why did you agree to marry me in the first place?" Davis pressed his lips into a tight line. He married me back then because he valued my family background, which could help him secure his position as CEO of Vance. Now that he was abandoning me after I helped him, what could anyone say? I didn't feel like saying anything more to him, so I picked up my bag and got into my car. Before I married Davis, I worked at Dad's company, but I resigned after we got married. I opened my own studio, specializing in niche designs and evening gowns. After a few days of rest, I officially started working. Regarding my divorce from Davis, Dad initially scolded me, saying I was too rash. But when he found out I got $200 million from Davis in the divorce settlement, Dad immediately said, "Divorced is divorced. A man who changes his heart is a rotten apple. Keeping him only makes things worse." I thought I might feel melancholic after getting divorced, but surprisingly, I didn't. From the day I decided to let go of Davis, I rarely seemed to think of him anymore. After a month-long waiting period, Davis and I collected our divorce papers and exited the county's office. The housekeeper at home called Davis, and I didn't know what new trouble Ava had caused, but Davis left in a hurry. I, on the other hand, sat alone in the car, holding the freshly issued divorce papers, lost in thought for a long time, until someone tapped on my car window. I snapped out of it, and who knew, when I looked up, I saw a handsome face with a smile. "Ethan?" My first instinct was to start the car, but who knew, he had already walked around the front, opened the passenger door, and made himself at home. "Long time no see, sister. That night, after you took advantage and left, you ran off while I was in the shower. Wasn't that a little irresponsible?" I raised a hand and pressed hard on my temples a few times, pursing my lips without a sound. Ethan wore a white shirt and black trousers, his demeanor clean and fresh. His wisps of hair clung to his forehead, and his beautiful charming eyes were now full of tempting laughter. "Why you? What are you doing here?" I sat up a little straighter, subconsciously wanting to tuck the divorce papers into my bag. But in the next second, Ethan snatched the divorce papers away. "I'll keep them safe for you," he said, openly tucking my divorce papers into his trouser pocket. "All right, now let's talk about us." Ethan's gaze swept downward, landing on my still flat belly. "Sister, we're having a child. Aren't you going to give me official status?" Come to think of it, that night with Ethan, I was purely driven by a desire to get back at Davis. That night, we both attended a gala, and in the middle of it, Davis received a call from Ava and wanted to leave. Probably because I had a couple of drinks too many, I felt a little hazy with intoxication. So I held on to Davis, forbidding him to leave, and loudly questioned if he was abandoning me because he had a new home with his mistress. Many people around us heard my questioning, all wearing expressions of enjoying the gossip. Davis felt he had lost face, swore at me twice, pushed me away, and strode off. But because I was drunk, I became stubborn, relentlessly following him out to question Davis. Eventually, Davis grew impatient and yelled at me, "So what if I go find other women? If you've got the guts, go find other men yours." Elf. I was provoked by that very sentence. So, after standing outside the hotel for a few minutes, letting the cold wind hit me, when I saw a solitary Ethan walking towards me, I stopped him. I whistled at Ethan like a rogue woman. I asked him, "Do you have a girlfriend?" I think he said no. At that moment, my mind was filled with Davis's words telling me to find another man. How I ended up at the business hotel with Ethan later, I'm a bit hazy about. The only impression I have is that the night was intense. Our family and the Hahn family were long-standing family friends. Ethan was a year and a half younger than me, and I had held him when he was a baby. Because I didn't hold him steadily, we both fell onto the rug. Ethan hit his forehead and was sobbing uncontrollably. For a long time when we were little, Ethan clung to me, always calling me sister. Later, in high school, he was dared by someone, I don't know who, to write me a love letter. Not long after I rejected him, Ethan went abroad at his family's arrangement. After that, although we occasionally saw each other at certain events, it was usually just to exchange pleasantries. The impulsive indulgence of that night gradually faded. After I sobered up completely, besides guilt, I also felt a bit lost. So that morning, while Ethan was in the bathroom taking a shower, I quietly got dressed and slipped away. Who knew that just one night would lead to me getting pregnant? "Sister, I'm asking you." Ethan suddenly leaned closer. He winked at me with his beautiful charming eyes, his tone aggrieved. "You're having my baby, and you've divorced that jerk. Aren't you going to give me official status? Don't get so close to me." A small layer of goosebumps quickly rose on my skin, and my body instinctively shifted sideways. "I can't not be close," Ethan said, his tone still aggrieved. "I'm afraid you'll run off again, and then who will I complain to? Today happened to be the day for my prenatal checkup." Ethan looked so woebegone, like a good man who'd been wronged by me. There was nothing for it, I had to take him to the hospital with me. Since I was pregnant, Ethan wouldn't let me drive. He insisted I sit in the back, and he drove slowly to the hospital where I had my prenatal checkup, terrified something might go wrong with me. When we got out of the car, I finally couldn't hold it in anymore and said to Ethan, that night was just an accident. "Ethan, our two families are long-standing family friends. You and I practically grew up together. Don't worry, I have no plans to remarry. I'll raise the child by myself, and no one will bully him. Can you? Just pretend that nothing happened between us that night? I don't need you to be responsible, and please don't make me responsible." Ethan's expression first looked speechless, then slowly transformed into anger. I inexplicably felt a little scared, and my feet instinctively took 2 steps back. "Let's not talk about that for now." Ethan forced a smile. "I asked a doctor I know earlier. This prenatal checkup requires a complete blood count and a blood glucose test. It seems you need to fast for the blood glucose test. Did you eat anything this morning?" I shook my head. Ethan took my arm and walked inside, then said, "I heard women experience morning sickness and excessive sleepiness in early pregnancy. Do you have either of those? Does morning sickness really affect your appetite? I've been learning to cook recently. What do you like to eat? I'll make it for you. As for being sleepy, that's fine too. Sleep as much as you want. I'll work harder and earn money to buy baby formula for the child." He chattered on the whole way, and I couldn't get a word in edgewise. I had no idea Ethan was so talkative. He certainly wasn't like this when he was little. Sometimes when he was angry, he'd be very aloof and needed me to coax him. Since it was a private hospital and I had booked my appointments in advance, I basically didn't have to wait in line for my examinations. Ethan, on the other hand, was nervous the entire time. Every time he received a report, he would frown and examine it carefully, even looking things up on his phone. I watched him, speechless. After all the tests were done, when I took the reports to the doctor, she reviewed them and said everything was normal, but wasn't reassured and meticulously asked the doctor many questions about pregnancy precautions. The doctor even had to reassure him not to be so nervous. Leaving the hospital, I went into a breakfast diner next door. After ordering, while the waitress was away, Ethan, sitting opposite me, cleared his throat and said, "Emma, let's have a serious talk." I was holding a disposable cup and drinking water. Hearing the name Emma, I couldn't hold it in and spat out a mouthful of water. Ethan didn't seem to mind, pulling out 2 napkins and casually wiping them. I said with a strange look, "Didn't you always call me sister? Just keep doing that. It's really awkward for you to suddenly call me by my name. If you prefer me to call you sister, that's fine too." Ethan didn't dwell on the issue. He continued, "Sister, when do you think would be a good time for us to get our marriage certificate? I just checked the calendar, and tomorrow's a good day." The waitress happened to bring out the soup dumplings I ordered. I picked one up, and it dropped before I could even put it in my mouth. "Ethan." I took a deep breath, racked my brain, and said to him, "I don't like guys who are too young." Who knew Ethan was completely on a different wavelength? He widened his beautiful charming eyes and looked at me. "But that night you explicitly said I was too big." In an instant, the dozen or so scattered customers in the breakfast diner all turned to look at us. In all my life, this was the first time I truly understood what disappear into thin air meant. "Shut up." I grabbed a soup dumpling and shoved it into Ethan's mouth. "I'm hungry, and you're not allowed to talk anymore and disturb my meal." "Oh," he mumbled, lowering his head slightly. It wasn't until after breakfast, when we were back in the car. I sighed and said to Ethan, "This child is purely an accident. I don't need you to be responsible for him, nor will I get married to you just for the sake of the child. You don't need to overthink it." Ethan pursed his lips and looked at me. "Sister, don't you have even a tiny bit of affection for me?" Looking at his hurt charming eyes, I hardened my heart and said, "That night I slept with you, it was purely because I wanted to get back at Davis. If it hadn't happened to be you, it would have been some other man that night." Ethan didn't say anything more that day, simply taking me home safely before leaving. Ever since I got pregnant, my appetite had grown significantly, and my tastes had become a bit particular. I used to love Aunt's cooking, but ever since she came to take care of me, I felt her culinary skills no longer quite suited my taste. These past 2 days, Aunt had been acting suspiciously, constantly glued to her phone, and I had no idea what she was up to. Strangely though, when she cooked again, the recipes changed, and no matter what she made, I liked it. I thought Aunt had learned some recipes online, but then I discovered she was messaging Ethan. It turned out that the recipes Aunt had been using for meals these past 2 days were all provided by Ethan, and even the ingredients were sent over by him. He claimed that the vegetables, fish, shrimp, and meat were all specially bought from a local farm, purely natural and pollution-free, good for a pregnant woman to eat. My lips twitched, and I couldn't be bothered to intervene. I didn't know if it was because I had eaten too much lately, but by the time I was 3 months pregnant, I had gained almost 3 kilograms from my original weight. I used to be a bit underweight, but now that I was pregnant and had gained a little, Aunt said my complexion was much better than it had been at Maplewood. Maplewood was Davis's and my former marital home. During my 3-year marriage with Davis, especially by the 3rd year, there was truly no affection left between us. He was increasingly uninhibited, openly appearing everywhere with Ava. I was trapped alone in that cold, desolate mansion, like a butterfly with broken wings, wasting away my life day after day. However, ever since I divorced Davis and moved out of Maplewood, everything had changed. No longer entangled in emotional turmoil, no longer feeling dejected, I was living the life I wanted. Eating delicious food every day and sitting out on the balcony drawing my favorite design drafts. Such a leisurely life filled me with hope for the future. Dad called me. There was a banquet that evening, but my half-brother was sick with a fever, so Dad and my stepmother were stuck at the hospital. Dad called me to ask if I could attend the banquet for him that night. He had already sent someone to deliver the invitation. I agreed. Before going out that evening, I specifically chose a relatively loose evening gown and didn't dare wear high heels, opting for a pair of flats instead. I just hadn't expected to run into Ethan at the banquet entrance. Be precise, Ethan was waiting for me at the banquet entrance. Sister, Ethan's face immediately broke into a smile when he saw me. He walked over and linked his arm through mine. You don't mind if I'm your escort tonight, do you? Before I could speak, he winked at me. Your scum ex-husband and the other woman are here tonight too. I didn't shake off Ethan's hand and went in with him. I had also heard a lot about Davis and Ava recently. After my divorce from Davis, the two of them became increasingly open, with Davis bringing Ava to many important events. However, I heard Ava had made quite a few blunders. She tried to one-up me at every turn, but it was an awkward imitation, not only backfiring, but also making her the subject of secret mockery by many. Ava's identity had been exposed online a long time ago. Her mother had been the other woman, and later died in a car accident. Ava, relying on her pure and innocent face, was also a well-known streamer on online platforms a few years ago, until she met Davis. Just as I was still thinking about Davis and Ava, the two of them appeared. Ava was wearing a white dress. Her pregnancy was clearly showing. Even a loose dress couldn't conceal her slightly bulging abdomen. She stood by Davis's side, clinging to him. Ava was talking to a few of the wives, a radiant smile on her face. However, the smiles on the faces of the wives talking to Ava seemed a bit forced. One of the wives spotted me and walked over a few steps. This was Mrs. Eleanor, the wife of CEO Lou from Ingfeng Estate and a major client of my studio. Oh, Ms. Emma, it's really been a long time. Mrs. Eleanor took my hand and looked me up and down. You look well. How have you been lately? Ethan had just been called away by an elder he knew. He told me to wait for him here for 2 minutes, and he'd be right back. I chatted with Mrs. Eleanor for a bit, and the other wives who had been talking to Ava came over to say hello. I looked up and saw Ava not far away, clearly angry but still trying to maintain a smiling face. Seeing me look over, Ava asserted her claim by clinging tightly to Davis's arm. She always thought that by taking over, she could join this social circle. But she didn't realize that in our circles, none of the wives or young ladies respected a woman who got her position as the other woman taking over. What's more, besides being pretty, Ava had almost no other commendable qualities. She didn't understand social etiquette, and as for her fashion, she only knew how to blindly follow her preferred influencer style. At such events, Davis attending with Ava might make uninformed people think he loved and doted on her. In reality, however, is only made Ava privately mocked and disdained by the other wives. Halfway through the banquet, I felt a little tired. After looking around and not seeing Ethan, I found a corner to sit down and planned to have something to eat and rest. Yet, there were always those oblivious people who just had to come over and be obnoxious. Oh dear, Ms. Emma, why are you sitting here all alone? Ava's sickly sweet voice instantly ruined my appetite for the mini cake. I took a napkin and wiped my hands, looking expressionlessly at the two people who sat opposite me. What do you mean, I'm sitting here all alone? Then what are you two, animals? Emma. Davis's face darkened, and he said angrily, after not seeing you for a while, how did you become so cutting? Ava was just concerned about you. Do you have to speak so harshly? Even if we're divorced and can't be friends, we don't have to be enemies, do we? Concerned about me? I laughed. Oh yes, Ms. Ava is truly concerned about me. When I was busy with work and worried I couldn't take care of you, she proactively took care of you in bed, didn't she? Afterward, she even sent me intimate photos of you too, bragging about his prowess. Watching's face grow increasingly grim, an inexplicable sense of satisfaction surged within me. Look at me, bringing up old things for no reason. It was just about being obnoxious, as if anyone couldn't do it. Ava blinked, and tears welled up instantly. Ms. Emma, why must you humiliate me like this? I just loved Davis too much. I didn't mean to hurt you. No wonder they say shameless people are invincible. A playful male voice suddenly interjected. The next moment, Ethan's hand gently rested on my shoulder, and he spoke to Ava across from us with a smile. Miss? Oh my, that name suits you perfectly. Ava blinked, then sat there motionless as if completely stunned. Emma, let's go. Ethan said. You must be hungry. I'll take you to get something to eat. Do you want wontons? Yes. I stood up without hesitation. Emma. I had just turned around when Davis called out to me. His gaze fell on Ethan's hand gripping my arm, and he asked with an unpleasant tone, what's your relationship with him? Yes, I replied with a smile, then walked away with Ethan without looking back. Ava seemed to sense something. She reached out to grab Davis's hand, but he evaded her. After that night, Davis called and messaged me, but I ignored all of it. When I was 3.5 months pregnant, one night I suddenly felt a slight discomfort in my belly. It was the middle of the night, and Aunt was incredibly anxious. Before I even realized it, she had called Ethan. By the time Ethan rushed over, my slight discomfort had almost completely subsided. Still, Ethan wasn't reassured and insisted on taking me to the hospital. In the middle of the night, he was busy running around the hospital all by himself. The doctor examined me and said there was nothing wrong. As for my earlier stomachache, it was most likely due to eating too much that evening. For dinner, Aunt had made potato pancakes, and I couldn't resist eating several extra pieces. After the doctor left and it was just the two of us in the hospital room, Ethan immediately looked at me with eager eyes. "Sister, how about I move in with you?" A few days after I hadn't agreed when he proposed marriage earlier, Ethan bought the house directly across from mine and moved in. I averted my eyes, refusing to look at his aggrieved charming eyes. "Are you really sure?" Ethan simply sat on the hospital bed, leaning his upper body close, his breath brushing my face. "Sister," Ethan slowly brought his forehead closer, gently rubbing against mine. "Please, give me a chance. I swear I'll be very, very good to you. It's okay if you don't want to get married now. But when you do want to get married later, could you please consider me first?" With nowhere left to retreat, Ethan's lips unexpectedly pressed against mine. But the kiss was only fleeting. He quickly pulled back and asked, "Did you find me annoying just now, sister?" I subconsciously shook my head. Ethan immediately smiled. Watching the smile on his face, my heart inexplicably softened. I raised a hand and pushed his shoulder. "Get up, you're pressing on my stomach." Although there was nothing serious, just to be safe, the doctor still had me stay in the hospital for a day for observation. On the morning of the third day, as I was leaving the hospital, I happened to run into Davis and Ava. The two of them seemed to be squabbling. Davis wore a grim expression, while Ava, with her prominent belly, was speaking to him in a gentle, persuasive tone. Today I was wearing a plaid short-sleeved top. The clothes weren't loose, so my slightly rounded belly looked quite noticeable. When my eyes met Davis's, he first froze for a moment. Immediately, his gaze fell on Ethan, who was carefully holding my arm beside me, then shifted back and was captured by my belly. A few seconds later, Davis's already slightly dark expression filled with furious rage. "Emma," Davis charged over, roaring, "You're pregnant? Whose bastard child is that?" Ever since Davis and I started arguing about divorce, we hadn't had marital relations for over half a year. So if I was pregnant, the child naturally couldn't be his. Mine. Ethan shielded me with one hand and forcefully pushed away Davis, who was like a mad dog, with the other. Ava, her face pale, came over and grabbed Davis's arm, softly saying, "Davis." This was the hospital lobby, bustling with people. Davis had just yelled so loudly that many people were already looking at us curiously. Ethan pushed Davis away, then put his arm around my shoulder and said, "Let's go back. Don't mind this mad dog," but strode out after us and then blocked our way at the hospital entrance. This time he didn't yell, but spoke through gritted teeth, "Emma, let's talk properly." I shook my head. "There's nothing for us to talk about, and besides," I looked at Davis, a mocking smile on my face. "Have you forgotten? That night, in the middle of the banquet, you left me to go find Ms. Ava. When I tried to stop you, you told me to go find a man too. So, Davis, is it really meaningful for you to question me like a mad dog now?" The color drained from Davis's face, little by little, until it was completely gone. His lips moved several times, wanting to say something, but in the end, not a single word came out. By the time he reacted, I was already in Ethan's car. The engine started, and we quickly drove away. In the rearview mirror, I saw Davis chase for about 10 meters, but he was ultimately pulled back by Ava. I blocked all of Davis's contact information. He found where I lived and started waiting downstairs every day. At first, I couldn't be bothered with him. I didn't even leave the house, just stayed home reading and painting. But after a while, I started to feel cooped up and really wanted to go downstairs for a walk and some fresh air. But I was afraid of running into Davis. If he went crazy, there was no way I, a pregnant woman, could run away. Ethan was as if he could read my mind. At that moment, he very proactively offered to accompany me downstairs for a walk and be my bodyguard. However, we didn't run into Davis downstairs. It was only a few days later that I found out one of Vance's regional branch projects had apparently run into serious trouble. Davis had rushed over to handle it himself and probably wouldn't be back for at least 10 days to half a month. "That wasn't your doing, was it?" I sat on a bench in the neighborhood downstairs, looking suspiciously at Ethan, who was tinkering with his phone beside me. He instantly knew what I was asking and replied candidly, "It was my doing." Ethan looked up at me and smiled. "Sister, don't worry. I won't let that jerk harass you." After saying that, he extended his phone screen for me to see. "Emma, what do you think of this crib? Should we have this one custom made for the baby?" The crib in the picture was pink, with a little cartoon design adorning the bumper. It was clearly meant for a baby girl. I pursed my lips. "What if we have a boy?" "A boy can use it too," Ethan said with a smile. "What does a little kid know?" He moved a little closer. "Emma, have you thought of a name for the baby yet?" "I have a few ideas. Do you want to hear them?" He often liked to get close to me, but aside from that, he never made any inappropriate moves. So I had grown used to it by now. All the names Ethan suggested were for girls. I thought they were all lovely, so I couldn't pick a suitable one right away. I saw Davis again when I was 4 months pregnant and went for my prenatal checkup. That day, Ethan had a last-minute emergency. He'd wanted me to postpone my prenatal checkup for a day, but I already had my appointment, so I asked Dan to accompany me instead. While waiting for the elevator after leaving the third-floor OBGYN clinic, Aunt suddenly had a stomachache, so I sat on a chair opposite the elevator to wait for her. Who would have thought I'd run into Davis? He wasn't with Ava today and looked travel-worn. Davis had 2 burly bodyguards trailing behind him. A wave of unease washed over me. Before my mind could fully register what was happening, my hand had already dialed Ethan's number. Davis's eyes were bloodshot. After staring intently at my belly for a few seconds, he strode towards me. He snatched my phone and hung up my call. "Emma, you and Ethan aren't a good match," Davis said coldly. "The family would never agree to Ethan marrying a divorced woman. The child you're carrying will only be a burden. Just listen to me. Terminate the pregnancy, and we can remarry." I felt as if I'd heard the joke of the century. I stood up, intending to walk around him to the other side. This was a private hospital, and there were hardly any people around, especially here at the end of the third floor corridor. Even with surveillance cameras, Davis looked utterly fearless. Just as I was about to scream for help, Davis forcefully covered my mouth. "Emma, don't struggle, or you'll be the one who gets hurt." He held me tightly, his 2 henchmen trailing behind him. Not far from the elevator was the stairwell, which led down to the hospital's underground parking garage. Davis, that madman, wanted to get rid of my baby. I didn't know if Ethan had seen the call I'd made earlier, but even if he had, would he get here in time? What do I do now? My mind raced, but Davis spoke again, interrupting my thoughts. "I had an affair, and you had one too, Emma. We're even now. As long as you terminate the pregnancy, we can live a good life together from now on. I won't ever upset you again." "Do you honestly think that's possible, Davis?" I looked at him mockingly. "Have you forgotten what you said about me? You called me domineering, said I had no passion in bed, like a dead fish. That's why you'd rather sleep with other women than with me." Watching's face turn paler and paler, my fingers trembled with anger. "What's wrong? Now that you know I'm pregnant with another man's child, have you finally woken up and realized you've always loved me? Davis, don't you think this is utterly absurd?" Only after he had put me into the car did Davis speak. "I don't know when I started falling in love with you. Emma, with your good family background, your capabilities, and your beauty, it's truly hard for any man not to be drawn to you. But every time I remembered that everything I have today was because of you, I felt conflicted. Later, I finally understood that I was feeling insecure. Because you had once seen me at my weakest and most helpless. So I could only prove myself by continuously hurting you. I had thought about everything Davis said before, but at this point, nothing he said held any meaning. Davis's car had just turned onto a back road when it was forced to stop. I saw Ethan get out of the car in front, looking absolutely furious, as if he wanted to kill someone. My heart gave a violent thump. I instinctively clenched my hands and told Davis, "Let me out now, and I'll pretend today never happened." The back road was narrow. With car blocking the way ahead, Davis's bodyguards couldn't drive past. And backing up here would be difficult. Davis pulled me out of the car with him, and the next instant, Ethan's fist flew towards his face. The 2 men quickly exchanged blows. Perhaps not wanting to lose face, Davis didn't let his 2 bodyguards intervene. He and Ethan wrestled, and for a moment, they were evenly matched. Worried, I quickly turned and retrieved my turned-off phone from Davis's back seat. After turning it on, I immediately dialed emergency services. 11. This day was destined to be anything but peaceful. At the police. The police initially thought it was just a mutual fight. After giving the 2 parties a simple warning, they brought over forms for Davis and Ethan to sign. intending to release them. Officer. Under grim gaze, I slowly stood up and said, "My ex-husband, Mr. Davis, kidnapped me today. He attempted to kidnap me and force me to terminate the pregnancy. Please investigate thoroughly, officer." Emma. Davis's face was terrifyingly grim. If he hadn't been mindful of the police nearby, he probably would have lunged at me and choked me. "What are you screaming about?" Ethan stood up and blocked him from me. "You two are long divorced. Emma is my wife now. What right do you have to try and make Emma and me terminate our baby?" Ethan grabbed the bewildered officer nearby. "Officer, there are surveillance cameras at the hospital. Please, you must investigate this thoroughly. A sick and twisted individual like him, who's useless and jealous that others have children, must be severely punished." The officer was speechless. Davis seemed utterly furious, unable to utter a single word in rebuttal. However, the police took it seriously. Davis was temporarily detained at the police, and several officers went to the hospital where I had my prenatal checkup that day to investigate. After all the commotion, it was past 4 in the afternoon by the time I got home. Aunt was already back and had prepared my favorite dishes. On the way back, Ethan told me that when Aunt came out of the restroom, she happened to see Davis carrying me away. She didn't want to tip him off, so she called Ethan to inform him, then called the police, and secretly followed Davis. Perhaps what happened today had truly frightened me. My nerves were still on edge and wouldn't relax. I even let Ethan stay the night. After showering, I read for a while, and finally managed to feel a little sleepy before going to bed. Who knew that shortly after falling asleep, I would start having nightmares? In my dream, Davis's face was twisted and terrifying. He had me tied to an operating table and forcibly removed my baby. The agonizing pain of losing my child made me scream out loud. When I woke up from the nightmare, my forehead was covered in cold sweat. At the same time, there was a knock on the bedroom door. The next moment, it opened, and Ethan stood in the doorway, anxiously asking, "What's wrong, Emma? Did you have a nightmare?" I stared at him blankly, my lips moving. When I finally spoke, I called his name, Ethan. Ethan came over and gently held me. His palms were dry and slightly warm. As he gently stroked my back, my panicked heart slowly calmed down. "I'm sorry. It was all my fault today. I should have gone with you." I had actually realized it as soon as I left the police. How could something so coincidentally happen at Ethan's company today? Davis must have been behind it. "It's not your fault." I gently shook my head in his arms. I paused, then asked him, "Do you think Davis will be sentenced?" Davis was always meticulous in his dealings. I was afraid that the hospital's surveillance cameras would have already been cleared by his people before the police even got there. I had considered that possibility when I was at the police. But I still chose to expose the matter, precisely because I wanted to deter Davis. All right, don't think too much," Ethan said, kissing my forehead. "Go to sleep. I'll take care of everything else." He didn't leave that night, staying by my bedside and watching over me. Because of that incident, I had some minor complications with the pregnancy and was on bed rest at home for over a week. Just as I had expected, the hospital's surveillance cameras had already been tampered with and cleared by Davis's people. He was merely given a verbal warning by the police and released. Since there was no evidence, my accusation of kidnapping against Davis did not hold up. However, during this period, Davis's company was jointly undermined by my dad and Ethan. After losing 2 major projects in a row, the Vance's morale was low. But then, news of my affair with Ethan during my marriage was posted online. In less than half an hour, the exposé about my affair was trending. The post described everything in vivid detail, even exposing the exact time and the hotel where Ethan and I had stayed that night. The comments below the post ranged from doubtful, to those enjoying the drama with schadenfreude, to those simply cursing me. Just as netizens were debating fiercely, Davis and Ava's names also appeared on the trending topics. Ava's entire life story, from childhood onwards, was exposed in meticulous detail online. My first thought was that Ethan had done it, but then I realized it was unlikely, as it wasn't his style. The posts about Ethan and me quickly disappeared, while Davis and Ava became the subject of a new round of online discussions. It wasn't until Ethan came home that evening that I learned the scandal involving Ava and Davis had been orchestrated by my stepmother. I was a bit surprised, because my stepmother and I generally had a very ordinary relationship. In fact, to avoid her overthinking things, I rarely went back after the divorce, only occasionally visiting my dad. Ethan also told me that my stepmother had confronted Ava once. The posts about Ethan and me were sent online by Ava using a burner account. I must have given her quite a lesson, as Ava was thoroughly terrified. To be honest, it was quite satisfying to have things resolved without me having to lift a finger, no matter what happened. However, my comfortable life was interrupted by a phone call less than 2 days later. Ethan's mother called me. She already knew about my pregnancy and said she wanted to find a time for our two families to sit down and have dinner together. Aunt had always been very kind to me since I was a child. When I received her call, I felt a strange pang of guilt for some reason. But she was an elder, after all, an elder who had watched me grow up since childhood. So I couldn't refuse the invitation for dinner. Saturday evening, in a hotel private dining room, the Ensure family sat together for dinner, and the atmosphere was even more harmonious than I had imagined. Mai was only 10 years older than me, but her cool demeanor gave her an unapproachable air. I had been divorced once, but my dad and stepmother didn't consider it a stain on my character. So when Ethan's aunt brought it up, my stepmother casually said, "What's wrong with being divorced? R is so outstanding, she can't be expected to waste her entire life on a scum ex-husband, can she? Besides, even if our Sure family daughter never remarries, we'll make sure she and her child live comfortably." "We didn't mean it that way," Aunt quickly said, giving Aunt a meaningful look, signaling her to stop talking. "I love Emma, so I don't care how many times she's been married." Ethan suddenly took my hand and said tenderly, "If is willing to give me a chance to take care of her, I will be good to her for the rest of my life and never or let her suffer any grievance." Just as a flicker of emotion rose in my heart, I heard my stepmother snort. Sweet words are easy to say. Ethan didn't get angry. Instead, he placed several documents on the table. "I know words alone are not enough. This is my entire fortune. If is willing, I'll give it all to her. She can even pay me a salary every month from now on." Mai fell silent. Mai cleared his throat and said, "Ethan, well, don't be too impulsive. Think it over carefully." Ethan's face was serious. "I've thought it over very clearly." Mai quietly turned his head away. He then asked me, a little nervously, "Emma, are you willing to accept my assets and then pay me a salary every month?" I didn't agree to Ethan's proposal, but I didn't refuse either. I said I needed time to seriously consider our situation. I was quite curious, what exactly did Ethan like about me? We'd barely kept in touch since he went abroad for high school. Even when we met, it was just to exchange pleasantries. When did he actually fall in love with me? These questions were gnawing at my mind. I couldn't resist asking for days, and one day, while Aunt was out shopping, I asked Ethan. To my surprise, before he even spoke, his ears immediately turned red. After a long silence, Ethan mumbled, "When I was little, I was short, and always got teased and bullied at school. Every time, you were the one who stood up for me and chased those bullies away. My grades weren't good, and my tutors always left after a few lessons. Only you tirelessly helped me with my homework." Ethan's long, slender fingers clenched then relaxed. He said, "Actually, I don't even know when I started liking you. It was in high school. I had that kind of dream once. I dreamt of you, and when I woke up that morning, I felt like my world had fallen apart." I froze. "For a while, you kept avoiding me. Was that why?" Ethan, his ears red, nodded. "At the time, I felt like I had defiled you. I was so guilty. And I felt so shameless for doing that to you in my dream. I couldn't face you anymore. But I also couldn't stop wanting to see you. If I didn't see you during the day, my dreams at night would be filled with your image. I thought I must have been crazy back then." I posted on an anonymous forum online, and after reading the comments, I realized that feeling wasn't madness. It was falling in love, an irresistible yearning and affection. Later, when you married Davis, I originally planned to suppress those hidden feelings in my heart and keep them to myself forever. But, he didn't treat you well. Ethan looked at me, and I was moved by the darkness in his eyes. My heart instantly quickened. "Ethan." My throat felt a little dry, and I instinctively wanted to avoid hearing what he would say next, but held my hand tightly, not allowing me to escape. He said, "You don't know. When I found out Davis wasn't treating you well, I thought many times about snatching you away from him." I looked into his eyes. Those beautiful charming eyes were now filled with possessiveness for me. I took a soft breath, wanting to say something, but in the end, nothing came out. I said I would seriously consider marrying Ethan, and I truly did, for a while. When I was 5 months pregnant, Ethan and I got our marriage certificate. Actually, it was a spur-of-the-moment decision. That day, as Ethan drove me to an upscale restaurant for lunch, we passed the county's office. I happened to see a young couple who had just finished registering their marriage, both beaming with happy, sweet smiles. For some reason, I thought of when Davis and I got our marriage certificate. Because he wasn't marrying me wholeheartedly back then, he kept a straight face the entire time we registered our marriage, even when we took pictures. So I asked Ethan, "Do you want to get our marriage certificate with me?" He first looked bewildered, then, as he realized what I'd said, his face broke into pure ecstasy. We never made it to the upscale restaurant that day. We went straight to the county's office to queue up to get married. I heard news about Davis again a few days before delivery. It was the dead of winter, and with the holiday season approaching, the hospital had become quiet. Since I was admitted for observation before delivery, several friends came to visit me before the birth, bringing many gifts for me and the unborn baby. To keep me from getting bored at the hospital, they also shared a lot of gossip. Among them was news about Davis and Ava. I then learned that the baby Ava was carrying wasn't Davis's at all. To secure her position with a child, Ava had recklessly found a sperm donor. After becoming pregnant, she quickly made sure the transaction was complete with him. However, after that man inadvertently discovered Ava's identity, he had been blackmailing her about having been a sperm donor. Davis soon found out about it. Davis had dragged Ava to the hospital for a checkup, and the results confirmed that the child she was carrying was indeed not his. No matter how much Ava cried and pleaded, Davis remained unmoved. He kicked Ava out of Maplewood. For some unknown reason, the two of them had never registered their marriage. So after Ava was thrown out, she didn't get a single cent. She had tried to see Davis many times, but he refused to meet her. Later, I heard that Ava gave birth to a daughter, but abandoned the baby at the hospital as soon as she was born, and Ava herself disappeared without a trace. The hospital staff eventually contacted Davis, but he claimed the child had nothing to do with him and refused to take her home. Davis had been overwhelmed and stressed during this time. Several elders in the Vance family were very displeased with him. To undermine Davis, they had been supporting one of his cousins. The group was currently plagued by internal conflicts and had lost many clients. Hearing all this, I felt nothing in particular. I didn't feel schadenfreude, nor did I feel worried or sad, because that person and I had long since had nothing to do with each other. My life was good now. As for Davis, whether his life was good or bad, that was his own business. A few days before Christmas, after experiencing labor pains all day, I finally gave birth to a baby boy naturally in the evening. I was so exhausted that I slept for several hours. When I woke up, the first thing I saw was Ethan watching over me by my side. He had been crying, his eyes were still red. When he saw me wake up, he asked if I was hungry, thirsty, or if my incision hurt. My gaze swept around the hospital room, finally spotting our son sleeping in the bassinet not far away. We had already decided on a name for the baby. If it was a boy, he would be called Leo. Ethan helped me sit up and then brought our son over for me to see. He suddenly leaned in and gently kissed my cheek. "Wife, thank you for being willing to have my child. Thank you for being willing to build a small family with me." I looked at our son, sleeping sweetly beside the bed, then at Ethan, who was clingy like a big puppy beside me. My heart felt a sense of peace I had never known before. After my postpartum recovery period, Ethan began planning our wedding. We had agreed before that we would discuss planning a wedding after the baby was born, but took care of all those details. I started getting busy with my studio work, or going shopping with friends, and then coming home to play with our son. Life was comfortable and pleasant. On our wedding day, the sky was so clear it looked as if it had been thoroughly washed with water. Our wedding was held by the sea, with only a small number of guests, consisting of close family and friends from both our families. I stood amidst a sea of flowers, wearing a pristine white wedding gown, while Ethan, in a suit, bent down opposite me to adjust the hem of my gown. Suddenly, with a click, the photographer captured the moment. The daytime festivities slowly faded. That night, after the intimate moments, I lay in Ethan's arms and softly asked him, "Didn't you say you wrote me love letters? Where are they?" From the time he went abroad for high school until I married Davis, Ethan would write me 3 love letters every year. But he had kept all these love letters sealed. I hadn't seen a single one. "Do you want to read them now?" Ethan sounded a little shy. Just moments ago, in bed, he had been as ferocious as a hungry wolf, yet now, due to embarrassment, his ears were turning red again. How could one person be so contradictory? I couldn't resist. I reached out and playfully tugged Ethan's ear, then asked him with a smile, "I won't read them. How about you just read them to me?" "Okay, I'll read them to you." Ethan leaned down close to me. He read me love letters for most of the night, though in a very playful manner. When I woke up the next morning, Ethan was no longer in the room. When I went out, I found him in the living room, practicing rolling over with our son. As Leo slowly grew up, his charming eyes were identical to his father's, making him utterly irresistible. I stood quietly at the bedroom doorway, watching the father and son playing joyfully on the living room rug. Sunlight streamed in from the open balcony door. Such a beautiful day, with a loving husband and a cute son by my side. It was perfect. Thank you for watching today's story. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and share it with your friends. We look forward to hearing your thoughts in the comments. Feel free to share your perspectives, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more exciting stories. See you next time.